After moving in together, my husband's parent demanded a spare key, saying, "I need to check in whenever I want." My husband handed it over without hesitation. I simply smiled and waited. A week later, they let themselves in only to find themselves locked inside with someone they never expected. When my husband, Adam, and I moved into our new home in Austin, Texas, I thought it was the start of something great. We had been married for just under a year, and this house was supposed to be our fresh start. A cozy 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, enough space to settle in, maybe even start a family someday. But then, his parents happened. Adam's parents, George and Marcia, had always been a lot. Overbearing, controlling, and completely incapable of understanding the concept of boundaries. While we were dating, I had seen glimpses of it, his mom calling him 5 times a day to remind him about vitamins, his dad insisting on checking in whenever we had a date night. Annoying? Yes, but I figured once we were married and had our own place, they would naturally back off. I was so wrong. We had barely been in the house for a day when George and Marcia showed up unannounced. No warning, no invitation, just their car pulling up in the driveway like they had the right to be there. I answered the door, and before I could even say hello, Marcia walked in, looking around like she was inspecting a hotel room she wasn't quite satisfied with. "We brought you a little housewarming gift," she said, shoving a bottle of cheap wine into my hands. George followed behind her, holding a printed-out list of home maintenance tips, as if we were incompetent children who couldn't figure out how to change an air filter. I was already annoyed, but then Marcia sat herself down on our couch, crossed her legs, and said, "So, when do we get our spare key?" I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" George chuckled like I was being ridiculous. "Oh, sweetheart, come on. Of course, we need a key. Just in case." "In case of what?" I asked. "You know," Marcia chimed in, "if there's an emergency. Or if we need to check in on things. Water the plants. Make sure you're keeping up with the cleaning." My brain stopped processing after that last part. I turned to Adam, waiting for him to shut this nonsense down. Instead, he nodded. "Yeah, that makes sense." And then he handed them a copy of our house key. I could feel every single ounce of rage in my body trying to burst out of me at once. I forced myself to smile, too sweetly. "Oh, of course," I said. "You're absolutely right." That's when I started planning. I played the long game. For a week, I acted so agreeable that even Marcia stopped raising an eyebrow at me. I thanked them for looking out for us. I made jokes about how helpful it would be. I even suggested they stop by whenever they wanted. What they didn't know was that I had spent every free moment setting a trap. Step 1. I installed a second lock on the inside of the front door, one of those heavy-duty hotel-style locks that can only be opened from inside. Step 2. I set up a motion-activated camera in the living room, which sent real-time alerts to my phone. Step 3. I made a very important phone call to my Uncle Mike. I didn't have to wait long. Exactly 1 week later, my phone buzzed at 10:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, an alert from the security camera. Motion detected, living room. I opened the app, and there they were. George and Marcia. Inside my house. They weren't just inside, they were snooping. I watched as George walked through the kitchen, opening cabinets and drawers like he was looking for something. Marcia wandered into the living room, smoothing out the throw blanket on the couch before making her way toward the bedroom. Then she did something that made my blood boil. She started folding my laundry. I stared at the screen, half in shock, half in rage. These people really thought they had the right to walk in whenever they wanted, go through my things, clean my house like I was some irresponsible child? Then, right on cue, they tried to leave. And that's when they realized they were locked inside. I saw it happen in real time. George went to open the front door, turned the knob, and nothing. He tried again, pulling harder this time. Still nothing. Marcia came over, confused. George rattled the knob again, then looked up and finally noticed the extra lock at the top of the door. He turned back toward Marcia, his face slowly turning red. "What the hell is this?" Then, before they could even process what was happening, the door to the basement opened. And Uncle Mike walked in. Uncle Mike is not someone you want to be alone in a house with if you don't know him. He's 6'3", shaved head, full beard, and covered in tattoos, most of which he designed himself. He used to run with a biker gang back in the day, and even though he's settled down and owns a tattoo shop now, he still looks like someone you don't want to piss off. He stepped into the living room, cracking his knuckles. Well, he said, his voice gravelly. "What do we have here?" George froze. Marcia let out a small scream and grabbed onto his arm. "What the hell are you doing in our house?" George demanded. Mike raised an eyebrow. "Your house." Marcia pointed at him, shaking. "You're trespassing." Mike laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, that's funny," he said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out his own set of keys. Because I live here. That's right. I had sublet the house to Uncle Mike for a week. Legally. With paperwork. Filed with the landlord. My in-laws had just broken into a legally occupied residence. George's face turned an alarming shade of red. Marcia, still clutching his arm, looked like she might pass out. Mike leaned against the wall, arms crossed, calm as ever. You're lying, George snapped, pointing at him like an angry school principal. You do not live here. Mike pulled a folded-up piece of paper from his pocket and unfolded it slowly, too slowly, like he was enjoying the moment. Signed lease agreement, he said. Dated. Notarized. I had made sure it was airtight. George snatched the paper out of his hands, scanning the document like he could somehow will it to be fake. Marcia peered over his shoulder, lips trembling. This is ridiculous, she whispered. Mike smirked. You know what's ridiculous? Walking into someone else's house uninvited. George ignored him and turned to Marcia. Call Adam. That's when my phone buzzed. Incoming call, Adam. I picked up, but before I could even say hello, I heard panic in his voice. What the hell is going on? I smiled. I don't know, Adam. Maybe you should ask your parents. He hesitated. They're saying some guy is in our house, claiming he lives there. Not some guy. Uncle Mike. Dead silence. Then, very quietly, I drove home slowly, giving them more time to stew. By the time I walked in, the energy in the room was tense. Marcia was sitting on the couch, arms crossed so tightly it looked painful. George stood near the door, still fuming. Mike was in the kitchen, drinking a glass of water like he had all the time in the world. Hey, babe, I said cheerfully, dropping my bag on the counter. What's going on? You know exactly what's going on. George's voice was low and dangerous. I feigned innocence. Do I? This, he growled, shaking the lease agreement in my face, is a load of crap. I tilted my head. Funny. The landlord didn't think so. Marcia snapped. You think this is cute, don't you? She hissed, standing up so fast the couch groaned. This little game you're playing? You've gone too far. I folded my arms. Too far? Like, I don't know, letting yourselves into my house without permission. George's hand clenched into a fist. We have a key. Mike snorted. Yeah? And how'd that work out for you? I bit my lip to keep from laughing. Adam finally walked in, looking like he'd just walked into a war zone. He took one look at me, then at his parents, then at Uncle Mike. Jesus Christ. Marcia zeroed in on him instantly. Adam, she said, grabbing his hand, voice full of betrayal. Did you know about this? Adam hesitated. A second too long. Her eyes widened. You did, she breathed. You let her do this. He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. Mom, but George had reached his breaking point. I want the key back, he snapped. Right now. I didn't even pretend to consider it. No, his nostrils flared. We're your family. We have a right to be here. I laughed. Actually laughed. Are you hearing yourself? A right? You don't have any rights here. You don't own this house. You don't pay the bills. You don't live here. George stepped forward, eyes dark. You're making a big mistake. Mike, who had been quiet up until now, let out a low chuckle. Oh, I'd love to see where this is going, he said. George turned on him. You shut your damn mouth. Mike grinned. The kind of grin that made men twice his size reconsider their choices. I don't think I will. Marcia grabbed George's arm. Let's just go, she whispered, but he wouldn't move. You're going to regret this, he told me. I met his gaze. Unblinking. No, George, I said. You're the one who's going to regret this. That night, after things had finally calmed down, Adam and I sat on the couch in silence. So, he finally said, running a hand through his hair. Are they gonna hate you forever now? I shrugged. Probably. He exhaled. I really screwed up, huh? I gave him a long look. You gave them a key to our house without even talking to me. He winced. Yeah. I stared at him. You really think they would have stopped at just checking on things? If I hadn't done this, they'd be in here every single day. He rubbed his temples. I get it now, okay? I messed up. I sighed. Good. We changed the locks the next day. A few days passed with radio silence from George and Marcia. I started to think maybe, just maybe, they had finally gotten the message. Then, on Friday morning, I got a call from our landlord. The second I answered, his voice came through sharp and tense. Hey, I just got a weird call from some people claiming to be your in-laws. My stomach dropped. They were asking about the lease, he continued. They were, well, let's just say they were fishing for information. I sat up straight. What kind of information? He hesitated. They wanted to know if it would be possible to terminate your lease early. My blood turned ice cold. They what? They asked if I'd consider evicting you, he said, sounding half amused, half annoyed. They offered to pay off the remaining months in full if I'd agree to lease the house to them instead. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I knew George and Marcia were entitled. I knew they were overbearing. But this was war. I sat in complete silence, gripping my phone so hard my fingers ached. Eviction. My in-laws had actually tried to evict us from our own home. My landlord, thankfully, wasn't an idiot. He had laughed them off and told them there was no way in hell he was terminating our lease for two strangers. But the fact that they even tried, that was another level of insanity. And I wasn't going to let it slide. I didn't tell Adam right away. Not because I wanted to hide it from him, but because I knew he'd be too soft about it. His parents had this weird hold on him, like he had spent his whole life being trained to obey. He was finally starting to see the truth about them, but I wasn't sure if he was strong enough to deal with this the way it needed to be dealt with. So I decided to handle it myself. I drove straight to George and Marcia's house. When Marcia opened the door, she visibly flinched. She probably thought she was about to get a sweet little visit from her darling son. Instead, she got me. "Oh," she said, forcing a tight smile. "We weren't expecting you." I smiled back. "Yeah, I figured. Can I come in?" She hesitated but stepped aside. Big mistake. George was in the living room, drinking a beer, legs stretched out like he didn't have a care in the world. He barely looked up when I walked in. "What do you want?" he muttered. I sat down across from him, folding my hands. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. "I know what you did," I said. Marcia stiffened. "What do you mean?" I turned my eyes on George. "You tried to get us evicted." That got his attention. He straightened up, setting his beer down a little too hard. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled my phone out and tapped the screen. "Should I put the landlord on speaker?" Silence. Marcia wrung her hands together, looking nervous. George, on the other hand, had the audacity to smirk. "All right," he said, leaning forward. "Let's say we did." Marcia gasped. "George." "What?" he said, waving her off. "She's not stupid. She already knows." I felt a rush of cold anger run through me. "So what was the plan?" I asked. "You get us kicked out, take over the lease, and then what?" "Keep Adam locked in here like some kind of man-child you can control forever." Marcia looked offended. "We just wanted to be closer to our son." I laughed. A real, bitter laugh. "Closer." I repeated. "You wanted control. And you didn't care if you had to wreck our lives to get it." George's smirk faded. "You're being dramatic." I stood up. I wasn't playing anymore. "If you ever, and I mean ever, pull something like this again," I said, my voice low and steady, "I will make sure you regret it." Marcia's face went pale. "Are you threatening us?" I smiled. "Oh, Marcia. I haven't even started." And then I walked out. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally get the message. I should have known they weren't done. A few days later, we started noticing strange things happening at the house. At first, it was small. A missing package here, a trash bin knocked over there. Annoying, but nothing major. Then, one night, Adam and I were watching TV when we heard it. A loud, scraping sound outside. Adam muted the TV. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. We both stood up and walked toward the front door. Adam slowly peeked through the peephole, and his entire body went rigid. "What?" I whispered. His voice came out cold. "My dad is out there." I felt my stomach drop. I looked through the peephole. And sure enough, there was George, standing on our porch, holding something in his hand. A copy of our old key. But here's the thing, we had changed the locks. Which meant he had just found out the hard way. George rattled the doorknob furiously. Then, when it wouldn't budge, he banged his fist against the door. "Open the damn door," he bellowed. Adam and I did not move. George pounded on the door again. "I know you're in there." I pulled out my phone and started recording. Adam was frozen, his face a mixture of fear and disbelief. This was his father, someone he had trusted his whole life, and now the man was standing outside our house like a crazed intruder. "George," I called out through the door, my voice calm but firm. "You need to leave." "This is my son's house," he yelled. "I have a right to be here." "No," I said. "You don't." Marcia's voice suddenly rang out from somewhere in the darkness. "Adam, sweetheart. Just open the door so we can talk." I whipped my head toward the window. She was standing at the side of the house, hands clasped together like she was in some melodramatic soap opera. Adam took a shaky breath. "Dad," he said, his voice wavering. "You need to go." George slammed his fist against the door so hard I actually jumped. "You are making a huge mistake," he seethed. Then, suddenly, the motion sensor lights in the backyard turned on. I turned toward the back window and my heart nearly stopped. Someone was in our backyard. A shadowed figure, moving near the fence. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed my phone and called the police. George was still ranting outside when the red and blue lights flashed through the windows. It took less than a minute for the cops to show up. I walked outside, phone still recording. The second George saw the officers step out of the patrol car, his entire face changed. "This is just a misunderstanding," he said, raising his hands like he was some innocent old man. "This is my son's house. We were just trying to have a conversation." One of the officers turned to Adam. "Sir, do you know these people?" Adam hesitated. For just a second. Then he exhaled and said the words that changed everything. "They're my parents," he said. "And they're trespassing." Marcia gasped. George's eyes went wide. And for the first time in his life, Adam chose me over them. The second Adam called it trespassing, I saw the moment George realized he lost. His jaw tightened. His fists clenched at his sides. Marcia gasped like she had just been stabbed in the heart. "Adam, sweetheart," she started, voice desperate, trembling. "You don't mean that." But Adam didn't look at her. He was staring at the cops. I don't know if it was fear or shame, or maybe just the weight of everything crashing down on him at once, but for the first time in our entire relationship, I saw him stand his ground. "They don't live here," he said, louder this time. "They don't have a key anymore. They need to leave." One of the officers nodded. "Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you both to step away from the house." George was seething, his whole body tense, but he wasn't stupid. He knew that if he pushed this any further, things would go way beyond embarrassment. So, instead of fighting, he turned to Adam and smiled. But it wasn't a warm, fatherly smile. It was cold, calculated, dangerous. "You think you're making the right choice," he said, voice dripping with venom. Adam didn't respond. George took a step closer. "Someday," he said, "you're going to wake up and realize that she took everything from you." A sharp pang hit my chest. Marcia was already crying, shaking her head like she couldn't believe this was real. "Adam, honey," she whispered. "Please, don't let her do this to us." But Adam's face was stone. "She didn't do anything," he said. "You did." That was it. That was the moment George finally snapped. His hands shook. His face turned scarlet with rage. "You're not my son," he spat. Then he turned and walked away. Marcia hesitated, for just a second, but then she rushed after him, sobbing. They didn't look back. The cops waited until they were fully out of the neighborhood before turning to us. "You want to press charges?" one of them asked. Adam shook his head. The house was silent after they left. Adam sat on the couch, staring at the floor, his shoulders hunched like all the weight in the world was pressing down on him at once. I sat beside him, not touching, not speaking, just waiting. After what felt like forever, he finally exhaled. "They hate me now." I swallowed. "Maybe." He shook his head. "No, they do." My dad, he meant what he said. I didn't lie to him. Yeah, he did. His hands balled into fists. His breath shuddered. I don't know how to feel." I reached for him, and to my relief, he didn't pull away. "I know," I whispered. Another pause. Then, softly, he said, "I think I always knew this was coming." I didn't respond. Because, deep down, I think I knew too. Days passed. No calls. No texts. Nothing. And then, one morning, Adam checked his email. He froze. His face went pale. "What?" I asked, moving behind him. "What's wrong?" Wordlessly, he turned the screen toward me. It was an email from a lawyer. And in bold letters at the top, I saw it. "Cease and desist order. From George and Marcia. They're demanding that we stop alienating them from their son," Adam read aloud, his voice almost numb. "That we return communication to its natural and expected state." My lips parted. "They're trying to legally force you to talk to them." Adam let out a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah, looks like it." I felt my stomach turn. They had spent years treating him like a possession, not a person. And now that he was finally breaking free, they were grasping at anything they could to pull him back. Adam sat back in his chair, staring at the screen like it held some great, terrible truth. Then he closed his laptop. And smiled. "They're desperate," he said. "Quiet. Certain." I tilted my head. "Yeah?" He looked at me. "Yeah." Then, for the first time in weeks, he reached for my hand. And just like that, I knew we had won. We sent one final email. A single sentence. "Do not contact us again." After that, we blocked them everywhere. They tried to get through. Fake numbers. Anonymous emails. Even a Christmas card, accidentally addressed to the wrong house. But we didn't bite. And slowly, surely, they faded from our lives. It took Adam a long time to process everything. Some days were hard. Some days I could see the guilt creeping in, the doubt, the old, ingrained instinct to obey. But then, One night, as we sat on the porch, looking at our quiet little street, he turned to me and said, "I feel free." I squeezed his hand. "You are." He exhaled. Then, smiling, he said, "So, can we invite Uncle Mike over? I think he deserves a beer." I laughed. And for the first time in a long time, we were okay. Some people say family is forever. But the truth? Real family doesn't chain you. Real family doesn't make you feel like you owe them your life. Sometimes, the best thing you can do, the strongest thing you can do, is walk away. And when you do, you'll finally be free.